Welcome to the Mostly Pod Out at Night, mostly. I am Graveyard, joined by my co-host, Salem.
Hello.
This is episode 39 of our weekly All Things Horror podcast. So, gas up that chainsaw, saw off that shotgun, and get to the workshed. We are here to hang out with some glorious deadites and swallow your souls. We dive into the Evil Dead original trilogy. It's been a long time coming for this episode, and, well, let's face it, Evil Dead Rise gave us the perfect excuse to finally dig into this. So then we'll be discussing Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness in preparation for 2 weeks from now. We'll be discussing the Evil Dead 2013 and Evil Dead Rise, and we might even throw in our Last Fan Standing with Bruce Campbell. I haven't decided that one yet because it's all things Evil Dead, right? So.
Sure.
All right, so as normal, we will go through and recap each movie, give our, well, as we determined right before we started, we don't remember the first time we saw these movies, so our rewatch thoughts, because I've seen these way too many times. And our number out of 10 out of this week is makeshift crosses, because there is a scene in every single movie where Ash makes a cross. Only twice for the same person.
Well, different actors, different actors, though.
Yes,
Same character,
different actors. Yes. All right, so we'll start, as we do canonically official timeline. It is with Evil Dead, which came out in 1981, was filmed in 1979. And I'll try not to rant so much on these movies because I could go on forever. So quick overview recap, because let's face it, their first Evil Dead is a pure horror movie, no campiness at this point in time in the series. And there's a lot of not talking. I'd say the last 20 minutes at least of the movie. And it's became like the template for the cabin in the woods scenario. Not many horror movies before this really did it. So I'm considering this, the grandfather of this genre. So we start off with meeting our cast of friends from Michigan, going to Michigan State. We have Scotty, we have Shelly, we have Linda, we have Cheryl, and Ash J. Williams. I can say that Linda has a very Brooklyn accent for being from Michigan.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're from Michigan State, so technically she could have been going to college from anywhere else in the country, so that's fine.
And they are driving. Scotty is driving the Sam Raimi car. That is Sam Raimi's car. That is in every Sam Raimi movie.
Do they ever explain why Cheryl is the only one that calls him Ashley and everyone else calls him Ash?
Because that's his sister.
Is it?
Yeah,
that's what I figured. But
yes.
They don't ever actually say it.
Yes. So it's essentially what happened was, I don't think she was going to college there. She was just, your little sister has to go with you. So they drove from Detroit area through Indiana, through Kentucky, into Tennessee. And this is where they actually did shoot the film, was in Tennessee. And, most people don't pick up on that little note on there. Because they talk when they're driving the car, they just crossed the Tennessee border and they're trying to figure out where they are. So, they're kind of singing songs, and it just seems like a group of college friends having a weird trip to a secluded cabin that they've never been to in Tennessee. Makes sense. And so kind of like as they're driving there, the car gets a little I wouldn't say possessed, but maybe malfunctions. Almost hits an oncoming truck. You have the world's weirdest scream. As the truck goes by from Shelley, they kind of go on to, they're honking, and the people they're honking at happen to be Rob Tapert and Sam Raimi, the producer and director and writer of this movie. Too much detail, I know. As they're getting there, he's blaming the car and have you ever been here? No. I bet it'll be nice. Yeah. And they're crossing really, really rickety bridge to get there to the point where, this thing will hold up, and the tire gets stuck, and doesn't seem at this point in time, it doesn't seem like a very tall bridge. Would you agree? It's just over a creek, like a ravine, but not deep.
Yeah, they don't give you the scope of it until the next movie.
Correct.
But it's also a very, very different bridge in the next movie. So.
Oh, absolutely. So they get there and, it's an old hunting lodge and, they're like, oh, the guy who's renting it, they get the keys. First thing they kind of notice off about the house is the front porch swing is just kind of banging against the house. They go stop it and it stops moving. Yeah, okay. Then we get Scotty goes in and starts kind of surveying like this hunter's cabin, I think would be the right word for it.
I would say I would just call it a derelict cabin because it looks in bad shape.
I mean, yes, I guess Tucker and Dale would have rented it as their vacation home to build it up.
Yeah, but I mean, it looks like bad shape. Like if you've ever been in an abandoned house that's been abandoned for like at least a decade, like that's what it looks like. It's like things are falling apart. There's like trash and like animal fur all over the ground and stuff. It is not pleasant.
Yeah. So, but yeah, this guy does a quick surveillance, kind of like almost a POV, like right in his face, kind of seeing everything. And I would argue that most of this movie, it seems like Scotty is the main protagonist. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Up until a certain point. I would say up until like 2/3 of the first 2/3 of the movie, he is, yes.
Yes.
He is like the kind of the strong male protector character.
What? He's driving the car. He's one that's going to the house, into the cabin first to survey it. And they're getting stuff unpacking, stuff getting tossed. Like I said, so it really seems like that Scotty and Ash were roommates. That Shelly is Scotty's girlfriend, Linda is Bruce's, and Cheryl's just his little sister that just happened to come along. So that's the dynamic. They're just unpacking, just kind of going about their day. And let me say from right now, the cabin, once they get going there, seems pretty nice. It has like 3 bedrooms, fully functioning bathroom, nice kitchen. But you don't really see all that until you get into the second movie as well.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It didn't look like that in this first movie at all.
Dude.
They showed the kitchen. They showed the bathroom. They showed the other rooms, and they were in a horrible, horrible shape. They were like falling apart. That's what I'm saying. Like the second one, it looks like it was renovated. It looks nice.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, it's still like you can tell they painted over like just the old wood that was there. So it's like you can tell it. Yeah, they renovated it, but it's still the same bones. And the first one, it just looks like it's been sitting there for 20 years.
Well, because in actuality, they did find this cabin in the middle of the woods, and they decided to shoot there. It was abandoned. Second one was on a soundstage in the school.
Yeah,
they went back, and it burned down. So they're having a weird, I couldn't even tell everything they're trying to have for dinner. It looks like Cheetos and salad and some sort of mystery meat.
Yeah, I noticed the salad and I'm like, okay, there's no cooler. Like this salad is probably very warm and has been just sitting in the trunk of the car for hours.
I mean, in fairness, no one was eating it.
So well, yeah, I wonder why.
So yeah, they're just having dinner and then they're pouring champagne into red glasses, and all of a sudden the cellar door opens from the wind and they're like, hey, we should probably go check this out. So Scotty, being the leader, takes the only flashlight and goes down there and starts investigating, and then there's nothing, so Ash stays with the women and they're like, Scotty, and no response.
Okay, so times 30. They say it like 30 times.
I know. Fun fact, that cabin didn't have a cellar, so they dug a pit and put the cellar door over it. So they just walked into a pit when they were shooting. Everything underneath was a separate screenshot on a soundstage somewhere else. So Ash goes down there with a lantern. He's looking around, and that place is like wrong turn-ish basement.
Yeah. It looks like like a Hillfolk basement that's been in use for like 100 years.
Yeah, but there's a projector down there, which seems like, this is like the Tooth Fairy, like, do you see type scenario where someone's tied to a chair. You right there?
Yeah, I'm surviving. Yeah, no,
Okay.
there's like gourds hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah.
There's like, yeah, everything's like covered in like the pipes have like leaks, but they're just like tied up with rags. I mean, yeah, like nothing
Yeah.
is. Yeah, it's very old and very
Single bulb down the entire basement.
right.
And, so we do the pan around where, we see his point of view as he looks around the entirety of the basement and sees nothing. And then Sky just shows up. He's like, hey, come look what I found. And then he sees that he found a tape recorder, the Kandarian Dagger, the worst looking Book of the Dead, Necronomicon Ex Motors.
Yeah,
and
it does look bad.
Yeah. And looks like it's drawn with crayon inside by like a 10-year-old.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it looks like it's made out of like old, like melted styrofoam. Like it looks bad.
But I mean, it's supposed to be human flesh, but like it's much better as the movies get out.
Oh yeah, it looks like a 3-ring binder that they like melted plastic on. Is what it looks like.
Yes. And a shotgun. He's like, one of these loading points in Ash's face, blah blah blah. And just of note, a torn up "The Hills Have Eyes" poster.
Yeah, well, all you get to see is like the top of the dude's bald head, and then like eyes. That's all you see.
Right, but we know what it is.
Well, yeah, I know what it is.
Yeah, I think we discussed.
You have to specify it's a single shot breech loading shotgun.
All right, which does change.
Yeah.
So they're like, hey, we should listen to this tape recorder. So, I mean, they bring it upstairs, they start listening to it, and Cheryl starts to get freaked out by it because it's Professor Noby citing the Kandarian demons passage he found at the castle, and he's reading passages from Necroma Ex Mortis, roughly translated the Book of the Dead, which is a book of lore, especially H.P. Lovecraft works. And Cheryl starts to get pretty freaked out by it. She drew a really great picture of the clock. And then as the passages are being recited, she draws like a 4-year-old's drawing of the book.
Okay, well, yeah, she was also being like possessed, and she was doing like the automatic writing that they do when mediums like get taken over by a spirit and just draw whatever the spirit wants them to draw. That's what she was doing.
Yes. But yeah, she does get pretty freaked out. And then is this the point where she starts? No, this isn't the point. So, she's getting freaked out. And she's like, "Yeah, stop!" And Scotty wasn't stopping. He's like, She told her to stop. But she just wants to leave. Right at that point.
Yeah, she's like, "Yeah, just take me home right now. I'm done. I want to go."
Yeah. I'm trying to. Oh, yeah. But then she thought she heard something outside, right? And that's why she goes outside for the infamous scene.
I think,
right?
Well, something like smashes through the window and scares her.
Yeah, a tree branch smashes through the window.
Right,
yeah.
And then she just runs outside. But yeah, she was demanding to leave before that.
Yeah. So she goes outside, and needless to say, as the wife and I are discussing it, is let's say gratuitous tree rape scene.
Okay, now
I mean,
this needs to be said. I'm pretty sure this is Sam Raimi's thing, right? Everybody's got a weird thing. Filmmakers always put their weird thing in movies. Like Tarantino's notorious foot fetish. That's in every one of his movies.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure his thing is like weird tree groping. I don't know what is going on, but it happens in all the movies.
Yeah. Very recently they reported they wish they didn't include it, but this is a notorious.
Wish you didn't include it in which movie? You put it in 4 of them. Wish you didn't include it. You're full of shit.
The first one's probably the worst one.
I mean, well, okay, because the budget was pretty low, and they spent a lot of it on this tree scene.
Yes, so they showed a lot. Even with the tree limb going into her.
They didn't go that far,
but I mean, it's still a product of its time. As this is a gritty horror movie being made in the late 70s. Your stuff is pretty gritty for horror movies at that point in time.
Yeah, I mean, it's gritty, but it's not the worst it could get. I mean,
No.
like I Spit on Your Grave came out at the same time period.
Yeah, but is their take on it? But
right.
Essentially, she was raped by the trees, and she, she's able to get back in. She has, the keys, where the keys type, Laurie Strode moment, and eventually, almost a shot for shot scene of that, her trying to get the keys and someone grabbing her hand, the door's open, bring her in. And, she goes, actually, we gotta go. I gotta go. And they're like, what happened? She's like, the trees, Ash, the trees won't let us leave. But he's like, okay, I'm taking her to the hospital. So he gets into the car and drives back to the bridge, and the bridge is torn up. Now, here's what's funny about the bridge scene is the bridge is wood. That was twisted metal that they were showed.
Well, it might have been wood over a metal frame.
Maybe, but second one was definitely metal.
Yes, correct.
He's like, okay, that's bizarre. Brings her back, and she's like, okay, we got to comfort her. We're just gonna wait till the morning to see, if there's any place we can go. Just wait out till the morning. She never explicitly states what happens to her, and no one really asks, other than she's attacked by the trees. Right. So then, the bored college students, Shelly and Linda, start doing, see if you have ESP game, right? Pull up a card from the 52 card deck and try to name it, and then you hear Cheryl in the corner starting to name them all perfectly. Because she's, they're kind of drawing, and then she just kind of goes up, and she turns around, and she is fully possessed deadite at this point in time. Starts to float up a little bit, join us. You're all going to die here. All that good jazz. And then she just promptly collapses, which people go, okay, that's weird. And then they kind of go over there, and then poor old Linda gets a pencil shoved right into her ankle, deep.
Yeah, it was a very fake looking ankle, I might add.
Yes, but still, you can feel like it hurt, like horribly.
If it looked real, yes, it would. It did not look real at all.
So yeah, like, okay, we got to put Lynn to the bed. She's hurt. We really need to go first thing in the morning. They kind of lock up. They knock Cheryl into the basement, through the cellar, and lock up, because that already had locks on the cellar door.
Chains, right?
Chains, yeah. So they trap down there. We don't know what's wrong with her. And then everyone's kind of starting to get ready for bed. And Shelly's getting ready, and something comes through the window, and she disappears. Guy goes checking her, and she comes back and is like fully possessed deadite. So, during this scene, she comes out and starts attacking them. During this, Ash gets knocked into two bookcases and subdued by them.
The one is funny because he's like wrestling with a piece of wood that couldn't have weighed more than like a pound.
Correct. He is very weak as a hero in this movie. And then, so yeah, he's like, you got to take care of her. And he's like, oh, it's your girlfriend. And he's like, no, you do it. And so Scotty promptly gets an axe and chops Shelly to pieces.
Yeah.
Scotty was spot on. Right? Like, I'm not taking this crap, and just action pieces.
But he's who I played in the game.
Yeah.
I played as Scotty.
So they kind of bury her, but yeah, she doesn't get a cross, does she?
Shelley?
Yeah.
Yeah, she does.
Okay.
Well, he doesn't bury her till later.
Yeah.
But yeah, at this point, no, they don't bury her.
Yeah.
But if you watch the scene, well, that's later on. There are two crosses. One is like made out of like weird driftwood.
Yeah.
That's the one for Shelley. Then the other one is
okay. Yeah. So all right. Then Scotty goes, all right. Well, we gotta get out of here. She's dead. Cheryl is there, and and Ash's like, well, Linda can't go anywhere. It's like, leave her. We'll just leave her. And we'll go. There's got to be a trail out of here, which is fair thinking. So then he's like, all right, well, I'm gonna try to find the trail. You can just stay here. I'm the hero, and he leaves. And then I would say then we get Linda comes out. Ash goes and checks on her and sees like the infection spreading from the pencil wound into her like entire foot. I'm sorry. I was also mentioned that he tried to pretend to being asleep to give her a weird mirror pendant necklace thing.
Yeah, it looks like
$3.
Yeah, if that. It looks like a magnifying glass, like costume jewelry with a magnifying glass. I don't understand why it's supposed to be like a treasured artifact. It looks like junk.
Well, it plays a big part in this movie and the next one.
Well, yeah, it does. I did say it plays a bigger part in the next movie. Yeah.
Well, this one too, though. He uses it at the end. So anyway, he's watches Scotty leave. He, gets the shotgun prepared, and then Linda comes. He's hearing Cheryl taunting him, and Linda goes there and starts sitting on the stairs and just laughing hysterically, really annoyingly too. And then he just kind of smacks her around a couple of times. She's not listening. She's like. They start dragging her, throw her outside the house because she's just being annoying. But she, eventually he's going to shoot her. He's like, all right, she's possessed too. And then she turns back into Linda. It's like, Ashley, I'm okay now, Ashley. And then Cheryl does the same thing. It was okay. Let me out. And then they turn right back and they, you're me, we're going to kill you, blah, blah, blah. He wants to shoot Linda, but he can't do it. So he drags her outside. And then he, she starts attacking him, right? And then, she attacks inside with the dagger. She tries stabbing him. He's able to get through her back and stab her. And then she seemingly dies. Drag her out to bury her. She comes back. And then she charges at Ash and he chops off her head with the shovel. No, that's after Scotty comes back. Sorry. Out of order. Scotty comes back all torn up from the woods. Is like, Ash is not going to let us leave. Then that scene happens with Linda and Cheryl.
Before that, I think Scotty stabs Cheryl with the knife in the back. And then she goes down, but it actually kills her. And then
she has it in her hand. He takes out his bowling knife, cuts her arm off, and then uses it to stab her in the back. She spews out milk.
Yep.
And then chops her up.
Yep. Yeah. And then the whole thing happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So then Scotty comes back. He's all torn up. Then Linda is shown possessed. She dies with her head chopped off, and then he buries her, and then we see him making the cross and burying her from the same point of view from the ground, essentially. And then when he does that, though, is that when?
Well, because when he was fighting Linda, Scotty was like dying because Scotty was like he had a big piece of wood like stabbed in his stomach. And
his leg was like broken. Yeah.
Right. And he had pulled out the wood. And so he's like bleeding out.
Yeah.
And so so while he's doing all the burying and stuff, he comes back in and Scotty is dead.
Yeah, pretty much. And then I'm trying to remember what happens to make Cheryl come out from the basement. She burst out. Was it because of the lightning strike? No.
No, he
goes
Scotty.
to
I think Scotty changes, doesn't he? Or no, is that after?
No, not yet.
Okay,
that's after. That's when he pulls the wood out. Sorry. Instead of burying her, he takes after he thought she was dead after stabbing her. He brings her to a tool shed and was going to cut her up with a chainsaw by locking her at the deer or the animal carving station. I would say. He couldn't bear him. He couldn't bear to do it, so he just buries her. She comes out, chops off her head, buries her again, and that's when I believe Cheryl comes back. Kind of, the evil goes through the house a little bit, chasing them, can't find him. Then he comes back, and Cheryl's burst out of the thing. So now he's fighting his sister, who's possessed. He's able to, gets her outside and is able to shoot her in the side and the neck. And thinks, okay, she's taking care of it. And then Scotty pops up as a deadite.
Right.
So battle ensues. He pulls out the wood that's sticking out of Scotty, and just blood just pours out of it. Like, there's so much blood. He's wrestling with Scotty, trying to fight him off. Cheryl comes. And he starts fighting her off as well, and he sees that in the scuffle after he's thrown into a table that the Necronomicon started to go into the fireplace and start smoking. And he saw smoke coming off them. He's like, okay, I'll put 2 and 2 together. I'll throw this book into the fire, and we should be good. But he gets taken down. His leg gets torn to shreds. And then, Cheryl gets a fire poker and starts hitting him in the back with it. And he's trying to get the Necronomicon to get rid of it. He can't reach it. So he uses this $3, magnifying glass jewelry necklace to try to bring the book towards him. And he starts getting dragged away from the fireplace. He's able to grab it. He throws it into the fireplace, and they all kind of stop. And then, the book comes alive, and its tongue comes out and starts licking the flames around it. And they start to melt. Yeah. No, I mean, I guess hands come out of them first as it's burning, and then they melt.
Well, yeah, the hands. I don't know what the whole hands thing was about, but yeah, the hands thing is what kills him.
Yeah, a giant hand comes out of each of them, tearing them apart, and then they start to melt. It goes daytime outside, and Ash thinks everything's good. Walks out the front door. All of a sudden, something we mentioned, the roaring POV ground, whatever. Because they never show it in any movie what this thing is.
No, it's obviously
everyone's able to see this evil.
Right,
you can see it. But we don't know what it is. It's actually point of view of a tremor. Let's call it right, but above ground tremor. And he's walking out, bursts through all the doors, through the entire cabin, hits them, starts to throw them back, or hits them, and the movie. I kept that short-ish. So, I'll start with you, Salem. What was I know this, you probably don't remember your first thoughts seeing this, but rewatches and just overall thoughts on the rewatches, even on this movie. And what do you have?
Well, I mean, you can tell it's a low budget movie, right?
Yes.
But I mean, again, they did a lot of great things with it. I mean, I've seen it enough times where, now I'm just looking for details as I'm watching it, because I've seen it enough times where I know what's going to happen. Yes. So they're just looking for details. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, cheap stuff that was done because of budget reasons. I mean, because it was essentially just like a bunch of friends that got a little bit of money together and went and made a movie together.
Yes.
I mean, obviously there wasn't a whole lot of budget that went into it, but it's fun. I mean, it's interesting to see the dawning of, like Sam Raimi, there's a lot of, like you said, the whole, putting the camera on a piece of wood and then having 2 guys hold it and run through the woods. That's where they get that effect. Yeah. I mean, but that's essentially, they did it out of necessity, right? Because they wanted that kind of effect with well, how do we do that? How do we do that cheaply? Like put a camera on a piece of wood, and two guys grab each side and run.
Yeah, he pioneered a lot of camera techniques that are still being used because out of necessity, like the shaky cam or the body mounted cam, because they had to.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
just
so there's
cheaply done.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing the dawning of this stuff. It's like, the infancy of this stuff. Seeing like, Bruce Campbell, you can see a bit of what he's going to be eventually, but it's like, I mean, it's like obviously very subdued because this is like, he hasn't, quite gotten the confidence of it yet. I mean, both, as a character and as an actor, because like the character, he's not, like we said, he's not even really the main character until the end of the movie.
Not at all.
Like Scotty is a very, he's like the male protector, main character kind of person until he leaves and goes in the woods. And at that point, that's when Ash becomes the main character, but kind of like begrudgingly. And he mostly gets beat up until the end when he's like finally, fights back. But yeah, like, I mean, there's none of the hammy, one-liners. There's none of the goofy gags that are in the later ones. There's none of that stuff. It's just kind of like plain old. I mean, there's little, you can see the inklings of it, right? You can see they probably wanted to, but they held back, It's interesting just seeing that stuff. It's interesting, just knowing where it goes. It's interesting watching it again to see how it started.
Yeah. You're very, very fair. And I was watching it with wife. I'm like, I'm almost saying the entire movie line by line. Like when she's home the car, I'm like, I know it, and
And see, at that point, you should take a few year break so you can enjoy it again.
I did see it in theaters the first time for the 40th anniversary. That was end of 2021. So I saw 2 movies that month. One was great, being Evil Dead. The other one was the new Matrix movie. So
in the theater?
Yeah.
No.
Yes. Do I watch this movie an awful lot? Yes, I do. Do I appreciate it more the more I watch it and the more behind the scenes stuff I learn? Absolutely. Like I said, this was being filmed in 1979, and the idea of a final girl or final boy really wasn't a thing. Like, there's only been a handful where, somebody lives through all of these. But Final Boy is still, to this day, a rarity in horror movies.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of that stuff wasn't really refined until the 80s. I mean, I know technically this came out early 80s, but it was made really before that stuff was
made in the 70s.
Trope. Yeah, it was a trope at that time.
Correct. But to your point, I mean, I've met Bruce Campbell. He's talking about like he can't watch this movie because his acting is so atrocious from what he knew, because he was 20 years old and he'd only been there, did backyard movies, stuff like that. But no, I mean, this movie is near and dear to my heart because I thought this was a fantastic movie overall because it showed a good terror. It really had a bad ending, and it just wasn't it was supernatural stuff, but the focus wasn't on necessarily like the villain of the movie. I consider Evil Dead to be the Aliens but with a male protagonist, because other horror franchises focus really on the villain more so than anything else.
Yeah,
and that's why I really appreciate this movie, because it doesn't have to rely on the same stupid villain every single time.
Right.
It's not Jason. It's not Freddy. You have a horror icon that is a protagonist, and that means something cool to me. It's different, and still is. But yes, I have it. I watch it so much. For anyone who doesn't know, hasn't seen the pictures of me, half of my sleeve is Evil Dead for my horror sleeve for tattoos. So, but I'll go into highlights. We discuss highlights. Is the innovation is there. You can tell that they weren't making a movie just to make a movie. They made a horror movie because they realized this is the cheapest thing to make. But if you watch all the behind the scenes stuff, it was a family movie, like we discussed Texas Chainsaw Massacre being a low budget movie. After we met John Dugan, talked about how it was a family event that was such a small knit community that everyone was there to do whatever was needed to make the movie happen, just like they did in Halloween. It was that low budget, and I think it shows that the love that went into making this movie. And it really kicked off that entire genre of this type of movie that it's so popular now that it's become a stale genre, as some people would say.
I would say it was stale when it started. No, I mean, like, this movie is good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, this movie is done well, but a lot of people, like, immediately when they tried to, like, remake this magic, it got stale. Because this is
yes.
The beginning. I would say this franchise itself, not necessarily this movie, but this franchise specifically, is like that campy, self-aware, garbage horror movie really starts here. And I really don't like those movies. They annoy me.
Yeah.
Because they try to, like, the movie is not good enough to stand on its own. So they just pander to what they know their audience is going to be. Like, they have to mention certain movies, certain actors, certain tropes and things. They have to make sure they get the audience to go, oh, yeah, I know that. That's great. They have to do that stuff because they know their movie is not good enough.
Yeah.
So they have to throw that kind of crap in there. And there's so many of them. And they get worse and worse as time goes by. But, like, essentially, like, yeah, Evil Dead is page 1. And then, like, page 100 is Sharknado. It's really the same genre. They all build off of each other, but this is where it started. And this movie is great. Don't get me wrong. I like this franchise. I'm not saying that this franchise has anything wrong with it. This franchise did it well. This is how you're supposed to do it. Yes. But everybody else tries to emulate this, and because they can't do it, they try to call back to it or call back to things that they know fans of this movie will enjoy, and then they play off of that. And these people, I don't know if they just, enjoy it or they're just like, playing along, whatever it is, but they throw money at it and they keep making these garbage movies over and over and over again because they're pandering to the fans of this franchise.
Well, and it's funny, going off to this is what if people are choosing horror movies to watch or horror movies that are being shown, what this is, Evil Dead is one of those movies. Either it's a choice or it's being shown. Period. It's Scream, Halloween, or Evil Dead. Right? Nightmare on Elm Street. She's watching Evil Dead. What's Donnie Darko go see in Donnie Darko? Evil Dead.
Right. Well, there's two factors that go into that. One, what's the audience they're trying to get, or some cool Easter egg that they can put in there, and two, how much money is it going to cost them to put another movie in it, right?
Yeah,
like a movie like Evil Dead. I'm guessing it's not a whole lot of money to put a scene from Evil Dead in your movie, right? And so I'm guessing that's how it does. But 99% of the time, if somebody's watching a movie in a horror movie, what movie is it?
The Thing from Another World or Planet Nine from Outer Space.
No, it's Night of the Living Dead. Because it's free.
Yeah.
They don't have to pay any money at all. So it's like every crappy movie, when somebody's watching a horror movie, it's always Night of the Living Dead because Night of the Living Dead is free.
Yeah. I also want to point out the reason why they haven't torn up The Hills Have Eyes is because The Hills Have Eyes had a torn up Jaws poster. So that's the horror movie rule, is to say your movie is better by showing their movie as just a movie in your universe.
Oh, so therefore, it's one step down. It's like a diss track.
Right. So that's why, and Wes Craven saw that he did The Hills Have Eyes, so he made Evil Dead being the in-universe horror movie that is not scary because, Freddy Krueger exists.
Right.
And then they get him back in Evil Dead 2 by having the Freddy Krueger claw in the workshop. I started a feud with them. So. But what are your highlights?
A friendly feud.
It's friendly. Yeah. What are the highlights for you, though? I mean, you mentioned the camera work and seeing.
Yeah, again,
big name like, starts in this.
Right. Just seeing, these things in their infancy is fun. It's nice to see it. Like you're expecting the classic Sam Raimi stuff, and it's not quite there yet. like
Right.
the whole weird of like, there's a lot of silence and they're like zooming in on weird sections of things and nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden it's like, everybody's looking in corners around, like looking at noises and stuff that we can't see, or weird, the pieces of wood flapping.
Close up shots of eyeballs.
Yeah, stuff like that. I mean, that's what like he's known for. So like in this one, you're like, oh, it's starting, and then it doesn't. It doesn't quite get there because he's not there yet. So it's interesting to see that at the baby level of these things. Like they probably want to do it, but they either can't because they don't have the technical ability to do it yet, or they're just not quite confident enough to do the goofy stuff yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and Sam Raimi does have a weird obsession with eyeballs. We do see this in Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, it's not quite as bad as Lucio Fulci, but it's up there.
Right. Okay, so would you say your low point is that's page 1 of that book, or do you have any other low points for this?
No. I mean, no, that's not a low point against this movie. I mean, again, I'm upset that the franchise, ended up creating that, but the franchise itself is not at fault. Those people are just trying to emulate this franchise. I'm not in any way dissing this franchise, saying that they made this happen. No, they didn't want that to happen. They didn't plan it.
No,
it's just that I don't like what happened because of this. And I don't put that judgment on this franchise. It's just I don't like what happened afterwards. So no, I would say there's a low point of this movie because I don't want to ding this movie because of that. It's not its fault. No, low point is just I mean the effects. Again, I know that's not fair. It's a very low budget movie. I get that. I'm just saying like the effects are very cheap. And it's like, the first couple of times you watch it, you don't really notice because it's a good enough movie, but I've seen it enough times to where like, oh, she's just wearing Mickey Mouse gloves. She's wearing Mickey Mouse gloves that are drawn to look like demon hands.
Yes.
Like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like whenever they turn into a demon, they don't have like latex effects. It's just like paint and like makeup.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, again, I know it's because they have a bad budget. And I'm not saying the movie is still great. I'm not saying it's bad, but if I have to pick something bad about it is the effects. I know that's necessity. I'm not saying they did a bad job of what they had. I'm just saying it is very noticeably bad watching it, multiple times.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. Do you have any other little points or do you want me?
No, you can go ahead.
No, to your point is yes. I mean, I saw a college production of Evil Dead the musical, and they emulated Linda's demonic face by literally painting like a nylon mask that burglars would wear typically, and just putting the paint on the back so they're able just to easily remove it. And I go, it looks pretty spot on.
Yeah, it probably looks close because again, this makeup was not fantastic.
No.
Like I said, the funniest part to me was like realizing that she's literally wearing Mickey Mouse gloves, like the big white gloves, and they're just drawn to look like demon hands with like nails stuck to the ends of the glove. That's it. That's all they are.
Yes.
That's perhaps, yeah. So again, if I have to ding it on something, I would say the effects are not great. I know it's out of necessity. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying if there is a weakness, that's it.
Yeah, I like. Yeah, it's and there is occasionally dubbing of people not actually saying anything, but they are in the movie.
Again, it's necessity for being the low budget as it is. It's not like they're going for reshoots,
No.
So they just got to make it work.
That's the whole point. Is that I mean, and for them literally just finding this cabin in the middle of the woods in Tennessee, they did great work with it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So, all right. So this week, in honor of Evil Dead, as I said, we are doing makeshift crosses out of 10. I'll go first on this one. I love this movie so much. You're going to be my balancing out of this franchise. Is it a perfect movie? No. Is it a 9.5? Yes. It really, really cemented my love of Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi's work. That these were the first people I can remember purposely seeking out anything they did because of this movie. What about you, though, Salem? How many makeshift crosses out of 10 do you give this?
This one, I mean, it's a good movie. I mean, yeah, it's low budget. But you're really not going to notice that, especially if you're watching this for the first time. You're really not going to notice that. You only watch it on rewatches. It's a great movie. It does some new, interesting, fresh stuff, especially for being 1981. I mean, I guess if you watch it now for the first time, having seen other horror movies, you wouldn't be that surprised by it. But you got to respect your roots. You know, a lot of things came out of this. So yeah, it's definitely above a rewatch, but I'll give it an 8. I'll give it 8 makeshift crosses out of
10. Okay, perfectly fair. So I'm biased. All right, then Salem, why don't you bring us into Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn?
Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. So, this movie basically starts out with a previously on, but it's like a slash alternate version of what happened in the first movie. So like the first literal 5 minutes of, well, actually probably close to 10 minutes of it is just catching you up to where the first movie ended, but this weird alternate version of it. So in this alternate version of it, it's just Ash and Linda going up to the cabin by themselves. Mm-hmm. So Scotty, Shelley, and Cheryl are not there. So they go to this cabin, and in this version, it looks like they just happened to find it. Like they didn't plan this at all. They just go there like, oh, don't worry, the people won't come back. You know, it'll be fine. He plays piano in this version. That kind of comes back a couple of times. Like he plays this certain song that comes back a couple of times. I guess it's worth mentioning. Linda dances very badly while he plays the piano. This again comes in a little later. She just kind of spins around a lot, and that's it. He gives her the same, costume jewelry, magnifying glass necklace. They do like, with their, doing their lovey-dovey thing, couple thing, right? She gets like attacked through the window. She turns into a deadite. He chops off her head and buries her. And then we basically go through everything that happened in the first movie, including the evil coming through the house and chasing him. And then it hits him, and he spins around a whole bunch, and then he eventually gets back into the cabin, and then we're basically caught up. That's like the first 10 minutes is like an alternate time version of the first movie, just to catch us back up. I also should probably mention that Bruce Campbell is a lot more confident in this movie. We start to see, his, kind of classic, goofy one-liners and kind of, eyebrow raising and stuff like that. This kind of happens.
Seeing that you're a woman, I am a man.
Right. Yeah. Again, we're getting like goofy lines. They're really starting to shine, as to what, the Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell can do together. Right.
Yes.
So basically we're caught up. Obviously he realizes there's, evil monstrous stuff happening. He witnesses very soon after this, his girlfriend comes back from the dead by just raising herself out of the grave, and it has a delightful Harryhausen stop motion animation dance sequence of her rotted body that had just been buried like an hour before and is now inexplicably completely rotted away. Mm-hmm. But her head is still fine. So there's this whole dance where she's like rolling her head around, and it's very, very choreographed, right? And then she like literally flies away like a unicorn. Just like jumps into the air and just flies away, right? So he's like, okay, this, bad things are happening at this point. I think the sheet comes back in, right? Or
he looks in the mirror because we have to say the same because it's crucial in Army Darkness. And he looks in the mirror and starts choking himself out. He thinks it's his reflection that's choking him, and he starts to slowly go insane here. To the point where he just sits and realizes he's sitting in a chair and starts laughing like a maniac, and then her head falls into his lap.
Right.
And then she bites his hand. Yeah, then
she bites his hand, and then he can't get her off of his hand.
Right.
So he has to bring her we get the classic work shed line with his lips that don't move. He just like looks up, not even towards the camera. He just like looks up, and then it's like dubbed in Warford. And then he runs outside when he's like swinging her head around, smacking against trees, and being very animated. gets her into the shed, puts her head in a vice,
Mm-hmm.
and then, but now she's, talking because now they can put her head, underneath her real body underneath. So she's like talking and saying, switching back and forth from deadite mode to regular Linda mode. Trying to convince him not to do it. And he goes, oh, he's going to go chop her head up. And he pulls this sheet aside, and there's like a child chalk drawing of a chainsaw. And the chainsaw is not there. Like, again, how would he know there was supposed to be a chainsaw there? And why would a child draw a chalk outline of the chainsaw that's taller than him? The child could not reach. Anyway, so as he does that, her body breaks through the door with the chainsaw. And then immediately gets knocked back and then cuts itself in half with the chainsaw and spews this black blood everywhere, which immediately disappears. But yeah,
he has some of it around his eyebrows.
Okay, now here's the thing. I think they did this as a joke to him because in the first movie he has a unibrow.
Yes.
It is very prominent and very clear he has a unibrow. In this movie he does not, but they put a dot of blood right where his unibrow should be, and it's there all the way till Army of Darkness. It is literally there through the entirety of this movie and the beginning of the next movie.
Oh, absolutely done on purpose.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're just making fun of him by putting this blood unibrow in there.
Yeah.
Anyway, and the blood on his face moves around a lot. Anyway, I'll get into that later. So he basically the body gets chopped up. He chops her head up with the chainsaw. He puts her in a bag and he buries her. And then at this point, I think this is where we cut in with the Nobis. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So we see this plane land. And then, the Necronomicon is introduced at this point. In the previously on, the Necronomicon was there. That's why all this stuff happened. So we do know about the Necronomicon at this point.
We do see Professor Nobi, his wife, his daughter Annie, and Ed going into the castle and retrieving it as a flashback. And then we cut to the plane landing with Ed picking up Annie.
Right. Yeah. And then Annie has like the rest of the pages of the Book of the Dead in like this glass display case.
Right.
And she's like landing and she's like, oh, Ed, did you hear from my dad? And he's like, no, there's no phone in the cabin. We're going to just have to go there. Hopefully he's ready to, finish the translation of the rest of these pages. Just to introduce that they're on their way.
Right.
So then we cut back to Ash in the cabin. And at this point, because his hand was bitten by Linda, I'm assuming this is why this happens.
It is.
Because his hand was bitten by Linda, his hand, goes bad and gets like these little black lines all over it.
Just like Linda's foot did in the first one.
Right.
After she got stabbed by the pencil.
Right. So we get a long extended scene of the hand trying to like smashing plates over his head and trying to punch him and knock him all over the place. Again, this is Bruce Campbell really hitting the peak of his, wacky acting career, I would say, is this scene right here. Anyway, so they're fighting, and eventually the hand manages to like knock him out, and then just trying to drag him over to like a cleaver. But he manages to wake up first, and then uses the chainsaw to cut off his own hand.
Yes.
And then after he cuts off his own hand, he puts the hand like under like a ice bucket or something. I don't know what that was. And then he puts, books on top of it to make sure that it can't move. And he goes and gets the shotgun because now he's ready. He's going to go kill the hand. And so the hand ends up getting out of the bucket and runs into like a mouse hole.
Yeah.
And it's like all over the place, like running all through the walls and stuff. And there's a whole bunch. He's trying to shoot it and he keeps missing. And then he finally thinks he hits it, and there's all this blood that comes out, and then like blood like sprays out of like a fire hose out of like every hole in the wall, and then completely soaks him. And then next scene, he's not soaked at all. It's like only the little bit of blood on his face again. But anyway, right after that is when we cut back to Annie, Nobi, and Ed are now. They basically got to the bridge that is supposed to lead them to the cabin, which was a matte painting of like, it's supposed to be like I think like a metal, like one of those.
Yeah.
I don't know what to call it.
Suspension
But,
bridge.
yeah, I don't know why one of those would be in the middle of the woods, but essentially it's a very, very tall, very, very matte painting version of this bridge that they crossed over earlier. But anyway, they get to the bridge and the bridge is out, and they basically find Jake, I think his name is. And he's like your basic hillbilly wearing like overalls and, a stained t-shirt, saying like, oh, we want to cross the bridge. Like, well, you can't cross the bridge. Well, why not?
Well, shoot, dude.
Yeah. Oh, look at the bridge. It's all beat up. Like it's all crumpled. And she's like, oh, well, is there another way to get around? And he's like, no, there's no other way to get around. And then we see Bobby Joe, who's supposed to be supposed to be a hillbilly lady, but she is like way too clean cut and way too clean and put together to be a hillbilly lady. But apparently she is Jake's girlfriend, who is like way out of his league. I'll just say that right now. Anyway, so she's like, well, yeah, we could show you, for money. And they ended up, I think it was like $100 or something. And he's like, oh yeah, $100 is fine, but you have to carry my bags. And he looks in her back seat and he sees like her purse and like the pages from the book. He's like, oh, sure. But then he forgets that she's got a huge trunk that he has to carry. So they basically go back to, cut back to to Ash back in the cabin. I think at this point he leaves the cabin, right? And then he's out in the woods. I don't remember.
No, when he flew back initially after when episode 2 starts of Evil Dead, he turns into a deadite, and then the sun comes out, and it gets rid of it.
That fixes it.
Right. Now he's back in the cabin where the deer, the lamp, the shutters, and books all start laughing at him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we have another mental breakdown. That's where he's like all like laughing and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden it goes bad again, and then he hears something at the door and he shoots at the door, and then that's when basically Annie Noby, who's the daughter of the archaeologist who found the original book, Ed, who is I'm guessing like her boyfriend / the dad's
associate
assistant.
professor,
yeah, right. And then we got the hillbillies of Jake and Bobby Joe.
You have to say Bobby Joe.
Bobby Joe. And he ended up shooting, like barely nicking Bobby Joe's shoulder.
Yeah.
But because of that, okay, so he shoots through the door, he hits Bobby Joe in the shoulder. There's like a kind of like a weird little standoff thing, and then Jake charges through the door and they tackle Ash to the ground, and then they like restrain him. And then they try to figure out what's going on. Like at this point, they just think he's a crazy guy that like broke into their cabin
and killed her parents because there's a bloody chainsaw.
Right, yeah. So they think the parents are dead. They search the entire place. The parents are not dead. There's no bodies or anything. They can't find anything at all. So as they're like looking through the house, she's like, "Oh, well, he used to keep all his notes on the recorder. Let's listen to it." So he's listening to it, and we hear him say like, "Oh, my dear sweet wife Henrietta has been taken over by the demons." And then like at that point, they look over to the cellar door and they see Henrietta's head like pop up.
Yeah.
Who grabs somebody? Somebody was standing over there. I don't remember. Who grabs her feet? I don't remember whose feet they grab.
Feet? I don't think they grab anyone's feet.
Oh, whatever. Anyway, so Jake and Ash, who manages to get out of his restraints, manage to like knock her back down into the cellar and chain the cellar shut.
Not before popping off her eyeball.
Well, sorry, yeah, her eyeball that goes in Annie's mouth. Is it Annie's mouth or Bobby Joe's mouth?
Bobby Joe's
mouth.
Yeah.
So anyway, so they basically, now they know that Ash is like kind of on their side, right?
Yes.
Because he didn't kill the parents, obviously, because there's no bodies there. And then he helped with Henrietta. They see like the wife was obviously, he didn't do that, made her into monsters. There's just monsters there. So then they're trying to figure out what to do at this point. Okay, what happened? Ed's his name, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so they're trying to figure out what's going on there. Ed got a little bang on his head from the fight with Ash.
Right.
So he's laying down with a towel, and then he pops up, and he's Evil Ed.
Right, and then he does the scene, which I think happens in all the movies, where like he floats by the window and like threatens, like vague threats, and like all kinds of like just vague demonic sayings, whatever. Yeah, so he's saying "dead by dawn." Henrietta, that's locked in the basement, is saying joining the chorus with them.
By dawn.
Right, yeah. It's very annoying. Anyway, yeah, so they do that whole thing, and then they end up, I think they fight Ed, right? Don't they?
Well, he goes after Bobby Joe and takes out part of her hair.
Right.
He just grabs hillbilly Jake by the face and throws him into the light bulb in the ceiling.
Right.
And he starts to attack Annie, and then Ash disappears. He says, "Come back, you coward!"
Yeah, and he comes back with an axe. And then fights him and then chops him up. And then I believe, and then Bobby Joe gets scared and runs into the woods.
Not yet. They're playing the tapes, and they're looking outside after Ed's dead. Like, I don't see the trail no more. And they start hearing weird, like, train noises, locomotion noises. Like, it sounds like something's trying to come through. So they go into a room, and there's somehow the spirit of Professor Nobi telling them that they have, how to banish it is in the book. And they all go into the room, and she's like, "Jake, you're holding my hand tonight, baby. I ain't holding your hand." And then it's Ash's severed hand, which scares her. Then that causes her to run.
Okay. And then she runs in the woods. And they run out, kind of sort of look for her, but they can't see her. They don't know which way she went. They go back in the house, and then Jake ends up taking the gun and taking over the situation. They're saying we're all going to go look for Bobby Joe.
Yeah.
So they all go outside and they're looking for Bobby Joe. I think Annie gets attacked by the tree. And that's when we get that's when we get that whole tree scene. And then Ash turns back into Deadite Ash.
Because he gets hit by
right.
Because Jake hits him, because little Bobby Joe is dragged apart by the trees and essentially smashed into the trees.
Right.
And before they go out there, Jake throws the book's pages into the cellar. It's like, now you gotta come with me.
Right.
Yeah.
So he turns into Ash, and then Jake and Ash are fighting. Annie gets away from the trees and gets back to the house. And then as she's barricading herself in the house because the evil's trying to get in, she blocks the front door, and then she blocks the back door, and then something comes in the back door, and she has the Kandarian dagger ready. And then she just stabs at whatever comes through the door, and it was Jake.
Right in the gut.
Yeah, she stabs Jake right in the gut. And then he falls to the ground, and then she immediately tries to slam the door and slams it into his legs. On his body first. And then she pulls him back a little bit more, and then slams it on his legs, and then pulls him back more, and then manages to close the door. Deadite Ash is trying to get through the back door, and she's dragging him all the way into the front room.
While screaming, "Shut up!"
Right, because he keeps screaming all the time.
He's howling.
Right, yeah. So they're trying to get to the front room because there's weapons that Jake said he was going to use, which of course he did not because he's severely injured. So then Deadite Ash manages to break into the house and attack them. And as he's they're all doing a big fight and attacking them, he sees the janky magnifying glass costume jewelry necklace. The song plays that he played for Linda on the piano, and then he's just fixed. Yeah. He's just cured. Now he's not a Deadite anymore.
Well,
now he's
before he does that, before that happens, before he changes back, Henrietta grabs Jake by the face and just drags him partially into the cellar, and tries skipping, and just gallons of blood is being shot at her.
Right.
And he's pretty much dead. And then,
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then, but anyway, they manage they get the cellar shut again, whatever. And then, but yeah, Ash is now fixed. And Annie tries attacking him several times because she doesn't believe him. But eventually he convinces her that they're fine. It's like, okay, great. So now they have to go into the basement that Henrietta just killed Jake in because they need those pages, because the only way out of this is to read the reversing passages or whatever they are to turn the whole thing off.
Passage 1 brings the evil into a body, in a physical body, and passage 2 sends it back.
Right. So they go down there, and there's like a very long sequence of Ash like finding like page by page by page. And he ends up finding Jake's like skeleton.
Oh yeah.
And he finds the last of the pages like in this back, corner of the basement. And then of course on his way back, he has a fight with Henrietta.
Yes. But you forgot to mention that the short little montage of him gearing up to go in there. He gets his chainsaw for his hand. He cuts off the double barrel shotgun at this point.
Well, is that before this? I thought it was after this. Was it
it's before this because he attaches it to his hand to open the cellar door with the chainsaw.
Oh, okay, that's right. All right. Yeah, I got news for you. Like, sawing off a shotgun is actually making it less effective.
80s cool thing to do.
Yeah, but 2, a chainsaw is not going to be able to saw through a gun barrel. And 3, if it did, the ends are going to be so rough that you fire the thing once, it's going to explode in your hand.
Yes.
But I guess it's cool, right? So he essentially has a Mad Max shotgun with a stock still on it for some reason.
Yeah.
So anyways, he goes down there. And on his way out, he fights Henrietta. There's like an up and down the stairs thing. He manages to. He throws the pages to Annie, and they manage to stay in one little bundle, and she catches them without even. There's like no effort to it at all.
Yeah,
it's like, when was the last time you threw a stack of papers at anyone?
In fairness, they were pretty wet in the basement. So
I'm just saying, if you throw a stack of paper at anybody, the paper's going fucking everywhere. There's no way it's staying in a stack. But anyway, so she takes the pages, and as he's like having a showdown with Henrietta, who now like grows like a weird snake neck, and her head turns into like I don't even know what that is, like a deformed monster head. I don't even know what it is. Whatever. She's got a long snake neck. She keeps saying, "I'll swallow your soul," again and again and again and again. Yes. So she manages to get out the first passage, and then she gets, and then the forest like comes alive. Like the trees start attacking the house.
Trees come alive.
Yeah, the trees start attacking the house and everything, and then one of them stabs her, or something hits her, and
no, it's Ash's severed hand that has the dagger and stabs her at the back.
Something kills her. Well, gets her near death. So as Ash is like fighting, now it's like a giant forest face that's like coming through the front door. As he's like fighting that, she's like whispering the last few words of the passages as she's dying. And he puts a chainsaw like in this giant thing's eyeball. Anyway, so she says the last of it, and it opens up like this big portal that just starts sucking everything in. It sucks in the car. It sucks in like, appliances and trees and all kinds of stuff. And eventually sucks Ash through it as well, with his final words of like, how do you stop it?
For God's sake, how do you stop it?
Right. And so then, he gets sucked through. And then we get the final scene is where he falls from the sky. And he lands in like what appears to be medieval times. And then immediately fights like a winged deadite thing, and then kills it, and then he's hailed as a hero.
Yes, and what's mentioned is when they're going over the pages of the Necronomicon, is this is the chosen one, or the prophesized one. He was promised one. He was supposed to stop Israel. And he's like, Shudder's like, what's wrong? It's like, someone walked over my grave.
Well, if you look at the picture, it looks like a child's drawing of Ash.
I know. And he's like, he was supposed to stop it. Well, he didn't do a very good job. And then he realized when he traveled back that it was him.
Yeah, and well, truth be told, he did not do a very good job.
Correct.
Yeah. So then that happens. They all like, hail the promised one, and he's like, no, and then it's over.
Correct. So I'm sure, I don't know if you even saw Evil Dead before Evil Dead 2. I'm not sure my order of seeing them either.
I'm almost okay. I'm about 99% sure I saw 2 before I saw 1.
I think most people did.
Yeah.
Because
I remember,
as I was a long time ago.
Yeah, well, you know me, I like to watch things from the beginning. And a buddy of mine was like, "Here, watch Evil Dead 2," and I'm like, "Well, I've never seen the first one." He's like, "You don't have to." Like, what do you mean you don't? He's like, I was like, "What do you mean you don't have to?" And he's like, "Literally, the first movie is like they tell you what happened in the first 5 minutes anyway." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
so,
they do.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he was exactly right. But yeah, so I'm pretty sure I saw 2. I saw 2 and then Army of Darkness, and then I saw 1. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I mean, obviously on the rewatches and stuff like that. So, what are your thoughts on every time you rewatch it? Do you feel like it built on the first one well enough? Do you like this better? I mean, obviously we'll see that across, out of 10, but
right. What I feel like 2 is, I feel like 2 is them just going back and making the movie they wanted to make the first time. But 1 didn't have the budget to, and 2 didn't have the confidence to. And I'm referring to both Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi. Because again, like as I was saying in the first one, this stuff is in its infancy, right? They wanted to do interesting new things, and they did, to a degree. I'm not saying they did not. They did a lot of cool, interesting things, but they didn't go that one step further that they wanted to. And I think this movie is essentially just them remaking the same movie, but being able to do the things they wanted to do. Again, Bruce is now confident enough to do the goofy stuff he's known for, the things that he wanted to do originally, I'm sure, but didn't feel like he could pull it off. And now, he's, accomplished enough where he feels like he can pull it off, and he does. And then Sam Raimi is, again, confident enough to do all these weird shots, like all the, people looking in different corners, like over and over again. I swear to God, that scene's like 5 minutes long. Where it's like you get the first scene of like, oh, it's Ash and Annie staring at all these corners while this weird noise is happening. And then we cut to Jake and Bobby Joe looking at all the different corners, going back and forth. Like, dude, how long is this scene? Just ended already. But again, that's things that they wanted to do in the first one, because you can see they took the first step, but never took the second step. And this movie is like basically them just taking the second step for everything they wanted to do in the first one. Is essentially what this one is. I mean, it's in the same place, right? It's essentially the same movie. I mean, yes, I know they, basically retold the first one. They didn't want to make it a true remake. They wanted to kind of sort of keep it a sequel. But I mean, again, they changed enough in their intro that it is a sequel.
Yes.
Or it is a remake sequel, or I don't even, a requel, whatever you call it.
I just call it a sequel, honestly.
I mean, it is. I'm just saying, but they changed enough in the intro where it's not even the same amount of people. I know to keep it simple in the first 5 minutes. I get it, because if there's 5 people, then it would have been 15-minute intro instead of 5.
Well, and legal reasons and all that stuff.
I'm sure.
So,
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm not saying there's a bad reason for any of that. I'm just saying basically this movie is them making the movie they wanted to make the first time. But this time they get to do all the things they wanted to do, and they had a little bit more money to do more interesting stuff. So they don't have to use the Mickey Mouse gloves and the bad makeup. This one they actually have the latex and like the contacts and all the stuff that makes it look better. The big huge tree monster and stuff like all of these things can be visualized now instead of just imagination.
Right.
And all of the stop motion animation. There's a bunch of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the stop motion is because, and we see it especially in Army of Darkness as well, is that he also wanted to write a love letter to Ray Harryhausen, right? The godfather of stop motion animation for everything. And they actually had special effects crew on this one. And, they said, I remember listening to them talk about the contacts they had to wear. They could not see shit out of those contacts.
Yeah, back in those days, if you had a solid colored contacts, you weren't seeing anything.
Yeah.
People had to tell you where things were.
irritated everyone's eyes and all that stuff. But no, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's trying to, I feel like I saw Evil Dead 2 on some drive-in thing before Army of Darkness, but I like the first one I probably sat down and watched was Army of Darkness, just because how young I was when these I wasn't born for the first one, I was 2 for the second one. But Army of Darkness came on the Comedy Channel after MSC3K like every weekend in the early '90s.
Yeah, no, we used to rent Evil Dead 2 all the time. Like whenever we had a party, Evil Dead 2 would be like playing on repeat. And like in the background, it was like atmosphere for the party. It was always on. That Army of Darkness we didn't put in the mix until later. And like I said, the first one I don't think I watched until probably a few years later.
Yeah.
But back then, Evil Dead 1 was not readily available. Like you could go to the video store, and find Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, but you could not find the first one. The first one was hard to find.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, Evil Dead 2, yes, there's a lot of reasons why they didn't have the rights to their own movie, which is stupid. They couldn't get the actors back at that point in time. They already had the contract being written up about hiring people, and we had that come to fruition with Crispin Glover and Back to the Future 2, even using archival footage and all that legal crap that goes with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, they got the gist of it, and canonically, his Cheryl does die in the woods, especially in the comics, especially in the video games, and the Ash versus Evil Dead TV show. That still all happens. Everything that happens in 1 and 2 is still canonically there. And I would argue that it would make more sense that he's gone completely crazy versus just Linda, than Linda and 3 of his other friends, including his sister. It's more of a mental break for the character. I think, yeah, they ramp up the stuff. But I mean, like I said, I watch all the stuff I can out of it behind the scenes. They said that Bruce Campbell's the greatest reverse actor in Hollywood, because a lot of the shots they do is reverse acting. Like Bobby Joe getting the eyeball, she actually spits it out, and it goes backwards as opposed to going into her mouth. So there's a lot of reverse acting. And movie was really made just for Sam Raimi to torture the crap out of Bruce Campbell. They hit him with many things as possible. If you watch it behind the scenes with they call it the Muppet Linda, when she's attacking him with the chainsaw, you just see Sam Raimi hit him again, just to torture his friend because they're childhood friends.
Right.
But no, I think this is a great mythos that we start to see. It's a good transition piece between Evil Dead and Army of Darkness. That he was pretty useless in the first one, and he starts getting into his own right. But you see him, especially like when he fires a shotgun while shooting at the hand, how slow he is changing reloading the gun. He's very slow. And then you see that progression of him getting better, being one-handed with the shotgun in Army of Darkness. So I think this is a perfect stepping stone in the trilogy. And it's bloodier, gorier. And they said that the reason why there's all these different colors of blood is because the amount of blood they used was the most used in a movie. And
up until that point, yeah.
Up until that point, yeah. And so it had to be different colors. It couldn't be all blood red because it would be rated X for the amount of blood being used. So they had to get that R rating, and the way they did it was with the different colored bloods. That's why you have blue and greens and blacks in there. No, as I said, I think this is a damn good movie, and I can probably quote this just as much as the first one. But what are your highlights for this movie?
Yeah, like I say, I mean, it's essentially, this is, for me, this is Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell at their peak. Yeah. This is now they have their confidence. They can make the movie that they wanted to make, and they're fantastic. They're great in the movie in this movie that they make. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
I think after this movie, it gets into territory that I'm not a huge fan of, to where it becomes a parody of itself, and it becomes
Right.
just a big jokey mess. But this movie is peak. This is where they have the perfect balance of everything. They have the perfect balance of, horror comes in and there's like real horror things happening, right? People are dying, there's blood everywhere, but then right after that there's jokes, right?
Yep.
But it's enough to even it out, and it's a fair amount both ways. It doesn't go too heavy one or the other.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like they perfectly balanced me. That's like I'm saying, this is the peak that I think Sam Raimi hit. And especially with Bruce Campbell there, this is the peak of it. Like I said, this is, I think, the best version of a movie we're ever going to have with the two of them involved.
Maybe. There's stuff in the works. Yeah,
it is. I can guarantee you it already is.
Yeah. I mean, do you think? Yeah, obviously we mentioned special effects. Our special effects are a hell of a lot better, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Everything again. Everything is one upped in this movie, right? You take the shotgun. The shotgun in the first movie was a single shot, one barrel breech loaded shotgun. In this movie, it's a double barrel shotgun, and I think that metaphor goes for basically everything in this movie. The first movie is, again, the one round breech load shotgun, and this movie is two barrels, right? It's everything but a little bit more. They have more budget, so they have better effects. Yep. They have better acting because Bruce is more confident. They have more money to get better actors. And it's, again, everything is just that one step up better than the first one. And this is the movie I think they wanted to make the first time, and luckily they got to make it a second time. And I think this is again, this is the peak of what they've created together.
Right. And I completely agree with that. That's a good highlight. It's one of my highlights too. And what also is interesting is, and this is why I also compare it to the Alien franchise, is, let's face it, the 80s were notorious for making a sequel every year. A lot of the 80s for the big franchises.
Right.
But you have this, 5 years out in theaters between them. And there's another 7 till Army of Darkness, right? And the only franchise that waits that long between, movies was Alien. And Alien didn't need to have a movie every year or 2 years. It was about every, 7, 8-ish, essentially?
Well, Alien was 79, and Aliens was 86.
86.
So that's 7.
Yeah.
And then Alien 3, I believe, was 92, 3?
93.
Yeah.
But this almost followed the exact same timeline because it was made in 79, didn't come out in 79, but then 86 and then 93.
Well, again, I think it also follows quality-wise.
Yeah.
Again, I would say this is, again, when people say, name a sequel that's better than the original, this is one of the ones that I always say. It's Evil Dead 2 is better than the first one. Is it? Use the shotgun metaphor, right? Everything is just better. It's just a better version of what it was in the original one. It's the same thing, just better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I completely agree. Acting, everything's better. Low points, yes. Jake was supposed to be annoying and stupid, and he was good at it. Yeah. They do have, the episode, everyone has to shout each other's name for a couple of minutes, right? This time, this one was Bob Joe.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I'll make low points. I don't really have low points other than the obvious dub that was done that they just didn't reshoot it. What about low points for you?
I don't know who the continuity guy was in this movie, but they need to be fired. I mean, when you look at scene to scene to scene, it is radically different. The blood on Bruce Campbell's face is different in every freaking scene he's in. Like it's in
Yeah.
the same kind of sort of configuration, but it is totally different every time. Sometimes it's a smear of red. Sometimes it's like a weird black caterpillar line. I mean, it's very bizarre. It goes back and forth. You'll have one scene where they're literally completely soaked in blood, and the next scene they are dry, and there's no blood on them at all. And in the very first one, there's a goofy scene where he gets covered in blood and then walks over to the table and touches his face with a rag, and then it goes away. This one doesn't even have that. It doesn't even bother showing you that he touched his face with a rag. It's just gone. There's a scene where Annie gets sprayed all over, completely soaked in blood. Next scene, no blood at all. I mean, everything just switches around. Like wounds seem to move around. Like Bobby Joe's shoulder wound moves like 3 different times. I mean, his face wounds move all over the place. People are soaked in all kinds of different colored blood, and then it's just they're magically dried and laundered the next scene. Yeah, the continuity on this movie is ridiculous. Again, watching it for the first time, you're probably not going to notice. I've seen it too many times. I notice these things because again, when you've seen it too many times and you're looking for details, you notice all the stuff. But yeah, whoever the continuity guy, well, I think there wasn't a continuity guy.
No, there was not.
Maybe that was the problem. There's no continuity guy that like takes a picture of the end of the scene to make them look like that at the beginning of the next scene. There was that. None of that. Just
right.
I think it was here. I mean, so other than the blood unibrow, everything pretty much moves around all the time.
Yes. And I could argue and agree with you for Annie. For Ash, I would argue that it's part of his insanity that he's envisioning all this stuff, so therefore it didn't stick to it. I could argue that. I don't think that's the case, but it's really just like we just filled the house with blood. Okay, now what?
Well, okay, well, like in the workshed, he gets covered with like thick black tar blood.
Yeah.
His entire face, his whole shirt, his whole body is covered in it. Next scene, totally fine. He's got his little blood marks all over his face, and I think his neck is a little bit of dirt on it, and that's it. It is somehow completely gone in the next scene.
Yeah.
And that was black tar blood. It's like there's no way that it could just disappeared.
Yeah. So the gallons of swimming pool of blood, they show it coming back out, so I just took it as he's going crazy.
Right. Yeah, I know it did hold the record for the most blood used in a movie for a while. I don't remember.
It took a long time.
Yeah, I don't remember what took it over, but something else did.
It took an awful long time.
But I think the movie that held it before them was a very short-lived one, because I think it was Dead Alive.
Dead Alive was the 90s.
Sure?
I think that beat it. Yeah.
Okay, well, all right. Maybe it beat it. I know it was the winner at some point in time, so...
That's the one that beat it.
Yeah,
because essentially is the New Zealand Evil Dead,
right?
The guy kind of looks like Bruce Campbell too, but
I don't know. I watched them all at the same time. I have no idea what year they came out.
Yeah, Peter Jackson, Dead Alive, early 90s. So no, but yeah, you're good low points though. So why don't you go first? How many makeshift crosses out of 10 would you give this one?
This one, like I said, it's I do like this movie a lot. I've watched it a lot of times. I'll give this one a 9. I'll give it a 9 makeshift crosses out of 10. Again, I like I said, this is the peak of the things that they've made.
Yes. I'm going all the way to 10. I mean, it's better than the first one.
What a shock. I'm shocked.
I know, right? I know. I know you'd be shocked. So, all right. Well, let's round it out. We'll tag team Army of Darkness. Arguably, not a horror movie.
I don't even know if arguably. It's just not a horror movie. Even though in the end credits it does say the ultimate in medieval horror. I'm like, no. It's an adventure movie. I mean, it literally has like Danny Elfman making an adventure theme for the movie. Like, this is an adventure movie. That's plain and simple.
Yes.
This is like in the vein of Willow. It's like Sam Raimi's Willow.
Yes. I mean, it was originally going to be called Medieval Dead. Or Bruce Campbell versus the Army of Darkness, which is the official title. So Bruce Campbell's name is trademarked.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say in the opening credits, it is like they show
Uh-huh.
the animated smoke, and it's like they're not even pretending like he's Ash Williams anymore. It's Bruce Campbell
Correct.
versus Army of Darkness. Like this is just Bruce Campbell.
Correct. So we get we get the, you probably wonder how I got into a situation like this type opening, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm a slave. Yeah, so they essentially
My name's Ash Williams. I am a slave.
Right, yeah, they neuter the ending of 2 to where the same ending happens where he falls from the sky. They literally use the same footage of him falling from the sky, but the whole flying deadite part does not happen.
Correct.
So he just falls.
At this point.
Yeah, he falls from the sky. People find him. They assume he's like, a witch from the future or something, and they chain him up.
Well, they thought he was part of Eric the Red's troops. That's why he's enslaved. Eric the Red is captured, which I figured you'd play Eric the Red a lot too in the game.
Well, you got to unlock him first.
Yeah,
Henry is his name. Henry the Red.
Sorry, Henry the Red. But yeah, it's you're correct. I mean, they you wonder how I got here. I used to have it all. Then we were introduced to S-Mart. The first introduction of S-Mart, that he is a stock boy, and he took Linda, this time played by
Bridget Fonda.
Yep.
Who it's very funny,
people,
right? Because Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, Linda has a lot of hair. Like it's big and fluffy and all over the place because they were both made in the 80s, right? They're big and fluffy and all over the place. And then Bridget Fonda has like a pixie cut.
Yep.
So there's like no hair at all. It's like you don't even look anywhere close to the same.
Correct.
But Bridget Fonda is probably the best looking out of the 3, so I'll give him a pass.
But same thing happens. Then it came for me. It went in my hand and got bad, so I lopped it off with the breast. And it still has footage of him doing it with the chainsaw and everything. So
they somehow locked his stump into the manacles.
Yes.
Like if you put handcuffs on a wrist stump, it's gonna fall right off. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. So essentially we get that. We even shorter previews and they do all that. Then he's there and he's like, hey, tell him, tell Henry I'm not. He's like, I'm not with you. He's like, I know. Why don't you tell him? I don't think it'll help, lad.
I do not think he'll listen, lad.
He's like, I don't even know these assholes. He is 100% quippy in this movie. He is full on ham hero that we don't deserve, that we don't want either. Right. So he's being taken back to the castle. His the knights attack his car like some beast, which is dumb. But the wise man with Mr. Pitt from Seinfeld, Lane's boss is crap, what's his name?
But the old guy?
He's just wise. He's just the wise man.
Yeah, I don't even think he had a name.
Yeah. So they're taken back and they're start executing them, and they're like the peasants look like they're in the middle of the Black Plague.
Well, you're supposed to. You don't know if you're in medieval times unless the peasants look like they're having the Black Plague.
Yeah.
Even though the machinery that powers the pit is like from the Industrial Revolution.
Correct.
Like somehow they have like manufactured things with bolts and rivets and stuff. I'm like, somehow I think you're about 500 years too soon for that, buddy.
And then we get to meet his Sheila, his love interest. Did my brother return? No. Henry's met killed, and she starts hitting Ash. They undo him, and he gets one guy gets into the pit, and they throw him to the pit. You don't see anything, but you hear like growling and screaming, and then just a black geyser of blood comes out of the pit. I'm like, I don't think one person holds that kind of blood in them, but sure, why not? He was about to get thrown in the pit. he gets hit in the head by a rock by Sheila, gets groggy, and then Lord Arthur signals and he gets thrown in the pit. And we get to meet the pit wench and the other beast. And, Spikes, he wants Spikes, get Spikes, and have this contraption to pull a chain and have Spike's wall come in on them.
Yeah, and this is a world that hasn't even hit the Renaissance yet. So.
Correct. So, he's fine enough. He's able to kill one of the wenches. The wise man, he goes, what's he, ancient future one or whatever he called them.
Strange one.
Strange one. He tossed down his gun and chainsaw.
Well, he doesn't. Just the chainsaw.
He jumps up, does the and it fits. Shoves his stump into the chainsaw and is able to defeat it. There's some hilarity ensues as he's killing the pit wench. The hand goes up, hits a guy in the face, and then he sees the chain being raised up. He takes his belt off, wraps it around the chain, and is able to come out of there.
And then his gun magically appears.
Yes, then he has his gun.
Because the gun was not in a holster on his back, nor was it given to him by the old man. It magically appears.
Correct.
After he threatens, the little scraggly guy.
Correct. He gets out there and he's like, all right, who wants some? You? Do you want some? Huh? I can't hear you. And then, he's going there. He's like, this is who I am. Get me out of here. Freeze Henry. And one of the thing he cut off the arm off climbs out of the pit as well. And he has his gun and he shoots it. And, he starts, Arthur's getting mad because he let his enemy go. Henry, like, for that insolence you shall pay. Pull out sword and he shatters his sword with his shotgun. Then it goes into his details about the shotgun to the peasants. Shop smart, shop S-smart, all that stuff. And they realize, hey, he's able to kill these deadites. He killed it publicly, so now he is the promised one. So finally, he gets all cleaned up. I would never want to eat grapes that way, but that's always seems to be in the fantasy realm of things.
Well, yeah. When you get into the hedonism, that's how you're supposed to eat grapes.
Apparently. I'm very picky when I eat my grapes. So I just can't imagine.
I don't eat grapes at all.
Biting into just a bunch of grapes like that.
Grapes are gross.
Yeah. So he's getting all pampered. They figure out that he's talking about he's from the future. He went through this vortex, talking to the wise one. And he's like, consulting the text. And Sheila's like, I thought you wanted Henry met. First you want to kill me. Now you want to screw me. Blow.
First you want to kill me. Now you want to kiss me.
You want to kiss me. Sorry.
Blow.
And she makes him, like, oh. And then, he goes, he consults the wise man. He's like, hey, if you get us the Necronomicon, there'll be passage there that can send you back to your time. But we also need to, get rid of the evil once and for all. Like, he looks at his missing hands, like, I don't want to do that. And then, there is a deadite in the castle that he kills, shoots it a couple times. He's like, all right, I'll get your
and then after he kills it, the old man just goes like, oh no. Anyway, and he just steps in and just continues the conversation like nothing happened.
Right. I mean, if you have a deadite in your midst, that somehow got affected.
They don't care at all. Like, nothing just happened.
Yeah. So he gets on the quest, but he's like, if I'm gonna go there, I gotta be prepared. We have a montage of him working at the blacksmith. He makes it because he is a smart man who's able to figure out how to do all this chainsaw stuff to weld it to his arm. Now he makes himself a hand. Sheila makes him a shirt. He's like, oh, I could use a blanket for my horse.
Okay, well, he makes a fully functional cybernetic hand. It's not just a fake prosthetic hand. It is a fully functional cybernetic hand that can, like, crush metal.
Yes.
With medieval technology, using tools that don't exist at that time.
Yes. So, essentially then he goes on his quest, and, like, hey, when you go to the crypt, to the altar, you have to say the 3 magic words, Klaatu, Barata, Nikto, right? Which is from,
I don't know.
the day the earth stood still. That's what they had to do to stop the giant robot. Bort? Yeah. So that's where he gets it from. Just throwing in some hamminess there from Sam Raimi. He's like, okay, cool. And he goes, and he's going there, and he goes, essentially, Horse gets very distracted and weirded out by the things in the forest, rightfully so, because we have the point of view again from the evil that we can't see. He's running away. He goes into a windmill that's also a mill. I mean, that's what they obviously were for at that point in time.
Right.
And so he's there and he sees a mirror, and because we had Evil Dead 2, he remembers, an evil version of being in the mirror. So he smashes the mirror, and then a whole bunch of tiny ashes come out, and some Gulliver's Travel meets Three Stooges shenanigery starts to happen in the windmill. To the point they tie him up. They make him ingest one of them. He drinks scalding hot water, kills him, and then starts growing out of him. Dear God, it's getting bigger. He bursts out of the windmill. He has a head growing off him, howls at the moon like the exact scene from Wolfman. And then another ash grew and comes out of his body, but has both hands. And he's like, who are you? You're good, Ash. I'm bad, Ash. And he starts, Goody Two Shoes fighting with each other. More Three Stooges. Good, bad. I'm the one with the gun. Shoots him in the face. Chops him up with the chainsaw, because he knows the routine at this point in time. And we get our third shot of him being even better at making crosses for bearing himself at this point. He eventually gets to the cemetery. He's like, all right, we're ending this. He gets there. He finds 3 books. One is a vortex that essentially sucks him in, and he gets some very claymation face that he has to shake out of it. The other one is like a monster manual or a mimic that bites his hand and starts attacking him. He realized, okay, well, clearly this is the right one. Doesn't remember the words Klaatu, Varata, Nick. No, there's an N word, something, and he just coughs out. There, I said all the words. Grabs a book. Cemetery starts blowing up. Skeletons start coming out. He rides back. He gets back into the castle. He's like, all right, I got your damn book. Now send me back, just like our deal. Did you write the words? Well, maybe I didn't say every tiny little syllable, but I said it mostly. You fool. You doomed us all. Well, can send me back? Yeah, well, send me back. Evil Ash is reformed, and he is very much rotted away for the 2 hours it's been. You agree?
Well, I mean, yeah. They had to make him look different.
Yes. So yeah, they're working on that. He's like, all right, well, you failed us. He's like, okay, I will help. Do it. And Evil Ash raises the Army of Darkness, which is deadites and not zombies, but
well, there's
deadites.
I mean,
skeletons. Yeah,
yeah. It goes from. It depends on how long they've been dead. So it goes from skeletons all the way up to freshly dead zombies.
Yeah. So he's like, okay, we got to stay and fight. So then we have another training montage. We trains the knights how to fight differently. The knights know how to fight. He starts making essentially explosives because he has the chemistry book from college in the back.
He literally makes gunpowder.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
He knows exactly how to mix it up in the right things because he looks at a page in a book, which I'm sorry, no chemistry book is going to give you the formula for gunpowder.
Correct.
Not going to happen.
And then he starts working on the car, and he starts preparing for this all-out siege. And he's like, "Hey, we need to. We also need to get someone out to Henry. Maybe he'll help fight us because there's plaguing it. Because they mentioned on that the deadites are also plaguing his people too." Sheila gets kidnapped by the flying beast he killed at the end of Evil Dead 2.
Mm-hmm.
The same flying beast takes her, captures her, and she becomes the Evil Ash Queen. She essentially is turned into a deadite as well, but arguably the best looking deadite.
That hair is atrocious.
Not very much changed. Yeah,
that hair is atrocious. She looks much worse as a deadite.
I'm just saying. I'm saying like most human like deadite. How about that?
That's fair.
So yeah. So then we have a good old castle siege in this third movie of a horror trilogy. That they start fighting and losing, they're getting killed, and he's like, "Oh, now I'll take out my car that I converted into this medieval killing machine."
Well, if you notice, the book that was right underneath chemistry was about steam works.
Yes.
So he apparently built a steam engine in his car with
out of his 73 Oldsmobile Delta 88
parts in less than a day.
Yes. Yep. So just heroic music ensues. We get the Danny Elfman theme. We have the battle. Stuff goes back and forth. He was killing a bunch of deadites, and then he sees Sheila. He stops. So he turns sharply. Car explodes. You found me beautiful once, honey. You got real ugly. And starts attacking him. She kind of stabs her and throws her into the pit. All this while, the general of Evil Ash is watching. He goes like, "All right, I'll do it myself." Goes in there, starts killing people. Essentially a one-on-one standoff eventually happens between, Ash and Evil Ash. And he gets burned alive, so he's just a skeleton. And then he has the book. He's dumb and very claymation and animatronic a bit. And then so he essentially explodes because he landed on a bag of gunpowder that Ash lights and catapult. Explodes. Book is saved. Henry's men came too. Everyone's living peacefully. And then the wise man gives them like, "All right, take these 7 drops, and this will bring you back to your own time." And he's telling the story then to Ted Raimi. And the female coworker is like, "Yeah, I could have stayed and been king, but I decided to come back here." And then, whatever happened to the deadites? Oh, it's okay. Then Patriot of Esmart turns into a deadite, and he gets like pump action handle shotgun.
It's a Winchester Model 94.
Okay.
It's a lever action.
Okay.
So if you have the 44 caliber version, it does hold 15 rounds. So that's fair for the amount of times he shot.
Okay, so that's pretty accurate then.
Well, I don't know about accurate, but it's a lot of people are like, "How did he shoot so many bullets out of that thing?" Well, if it's the lower caliber, you can hold the decent amount.
Yeah,
but
I'm sorry.
Why they kept a loaded gun in the gun counter at an S-Mart, I don't know.
Correct. I'm sorry. He had to recite the words for this phone. I get mixed up the 2 endings sometimes because I watch it a lot, both of them.
Well, there's the Rip Van Winkle ending.
Right.
There's that.
The Rip Van Winkle is the 7 drops. The repassage is it. It's like, did you say that right this time? Well, maybe not every tiny syllable. Right. So deadites, came back. He self-fulfilling prophecy that he did vanquish the deadites back then. And then he takes off his S-Mart shirt. He's still wearing that uniform underneath. Give me some shirt or "Hail to the King, baby," and kisses. End of the movie.
Yeah. Now, I think they should have kept the Rip Van Winkle ending. That way they could have had a sequel that was like a Mad Max, like post-apocalyptic sequel.
They are debating that still. All right. Good enough for the recap?
Yes.
I think I got everything. As I said before, this is probably the first one of this trilogy I ever saw that I can recall seeing and knowing it, because like I said, it's always at the end of Mystery Science Theater 3000 on a comedy channel. Not Comedy Central, but this is, early 90s comedy channel. I always watch the beginning of it. I'm like, why does this guy look familiar from the opening part of the movie? but this is pre-internet. So we're talking like 1993 here, before I had internet to be able to look this stuff up. It was probably by 94 or 95, I was able to go to the theater or video rental place and realize it's a full trilogy. But yeah, this is one. This I watched first. I can see why it was on Comedy Central, because it's not a horror movie by really any stretch of the imagination.
No, it's essentially what it is it's a horror themed adventure comedy.
Yes.
That's what it is.
I mean, I still enjoy the movie. I really like the movie. But what about you for your first watches or your rewatches for this?
Yeah, just whenever I watch this movie, I just see all the other movies that I hate that stemmed out of this. You know, all these other just terrible movies that decided like, oh, I'll just put a whole bunch of, jokes in my movie and then just be self-aware of how bad it is, and then I'll just make it funny. Like so many people did this, and again, it spawned a whole like, I don't even know, like a whole genre of just very terrible, intentionally bad horror movies, like trying to emulate the feeling you get from this movie or this franchise specifically. But I would say this movie is really where they get a lot of that stuff from. And it really just annoys the crap out of me because I hate those movies. I think they're a pox on the horror franchise in general. They're so lazy and just so, sloppily done. I can't stand them. But yeah, this movie to me is like the very start of that. And it just reminds me of it as I go through it.
Yeah, but I mean, how do you feel about it being in line with his character though, of Ash Williams? I think it lines up perfectly for now, essentially nearly 40 years of this character in this state.
I mean, it does, but I think again, this movie I think takes it a step too far. I think the perfect balance was in Evil Dead 2. The perfect balance is, there's some serious kind of horror-y things going on, and then it's balanced out with comedy, right? I mean, it's a horror comedy, I mean, there's no other way to say it, but it balances it out and it does it well. This one just amps up the comedy, and like, it's not like intelligent comedy. It's like Three Stooges level physical slapstick comedy. And they just like amp that up to 11. And then you have like this, mediocre average story that they just kind of like barely put there. Like it's like the most cheesy, tropish, generic adventure story ever. And they're just basically trying to sell this like, cheesy, slapstick hammy comedy over the top of it. And again, it's fun the first time you watch it, but like the more times I watch it, the more annoyed I get with it because there's just like these such long sequences that are just like nothing but hammy slapstick comedy. There's nothing else.
Yes.
And it's like, it gets real old real fast.
Well, because I mean, they started doing Three Stooges stuff, and you can clearly see that in Sam Raimi's work. He loves the Three Stooges.
Right. And again, they do, there was a couple little gags in 2. Yeah, there was, but it wasn't, again, it wasn't like overbearing, right? It was just a couple little things. It's like, okay, that's stupid, but whatever. It's like overall, it doesn't affect the movie. This one, it is like non-stop. It's like, please stop. Please give me something else. Give me anything else other than Three Stooges gags. I mean, it's like from the moment he leaves on that quest.
Yes.
To the moment that he gets back to the castle, it is literally wacky Three Stooges hijinks for like 30 minutes. And it gets real old, man. It's like, just come on, just stop. Like, I really just want to like fast forward through it. Like, it's so annoying. Like when he's interacting with other characters, it's fun. You know what I mean? It's interesting. That's when he gets his, his fun one-liners when he's like interacting with other people. I think that's where he's at. That's where it's at the peak. That's where it's the most fun. And it's like when he's just doing this like wacky overacting with himself. Like I understand that's where he shines, but it gets real old. It's like, come on. Like, give us a break in between. Give us something. Like meet an old lady in the woods or something. You know what I mean? Like to have some interaction with another character instead it's just like wacky overacting of him just over and over and over again nonstop.
Right.
It's just,
I
again,
mean,
like I said, it's too much. It's too much.
Yeah, to me, this was his testing of what we got from Xena and Hercules from Sam Raimi. The action comedy, adventure comedy. And I understand at this point in time, that the guy who co-wrote Evil Dead 2 couldn't do it, so it was just Sam and his brother, and they wanted to have an adventure story of it, and not so much horror, because let's face it, horror was fairly dead by this point in time, as far as people knew it.
Well,
the slashers were gone.
Yeah, as far as traditional, yeah, there was still around, but you had to do something interesting with it. Like I said, this is the time of Scream. Where like Scream was just priming up, right? And then Scream came out. It didn't do a whole lot differently. No, it just twisted it a bit and made it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more modern. So like they could have gone in that direction, but instead they went in this direction, and that's it's fine. It's where they ended up.
I mean, and unfortunately, most franchises at this point in time, the horror franchise, we did get to those quippy one-liners for everyone. That's why we got Freddy Krueger quipping and being stupid.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, you're talking late '80s, early '90s for every franchise. Everything got brought down to like one-liners and goofy jokes and stuff like that, and it got real.
And I feel like this fell into that pitfall too.
Yeah, at this period in time, I was like done with new horror. I was just like obsessed with finding older stuff, you know what I mean, and watching all the classic stuff. And then by the time I got done with all the classic stuff and tried watching new horror again, I couldn't stand it, and I just had to leave. I was like, no, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah,
and I took a break for like 15 years.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I said it still holds a place in my heart, but would I ever call it horror? Not really.
No, I mean, would I still recommend it to someone who has never watched it before? Oh yeah. Yeah, it's good. I mean, I would say probably watch them in order, right? I didn't, but again, because Evil Dead didn't exist. Like we always knew there was a 2. We're always looking for 1. I was like, I don't know where it is. Like we've been to like all these different video stores. I've never found 1. Like where is it? We didn't find 1 until later on. It was years later. A buddy of mine found it on DVD. We were like, oh wow! We all got together and watched it because we had never seen the first one before. We watched the second one at this point in time. I don't know, like 100 times. I mean, we'd seen it a million times. We used to quote it to each other all the time. Like we used to say, whenever we had to go to the bathroom, we would do the work shed line.
Yeah.
We would like look up in the air and not move our lips and go, work for, and go into the bathroom. Like that was our thing. Like we watched it that many times where it was inside joke. But we never saw the first one. And again, we watched Army of Darkness quite a bit too. But it was Evil Dead 2 was the one that we watched the most.
Yeah. Evil Dead 2 is the most iconic. Yeah, but we get Ash, as we know, Ash today from Army of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And but I don't ever sit there and go, oh man, I have to watch Army of Darkness. I don't get mad about it. Like it's not that film that I have to go, oh, I have to get through this one to get to the next one, like we do with some of the movies. Franchises. I never regret it. I enjoy the crap out of this movie. But what about so highlights for me is I mean it's a good end piece to for 23 years that we got for this character. Yes, he became the goofball, but Duke Nukem, the one-liner, was supposed to be modeled off of Ash Williams. And he's still the reluctant hero, the wise ass. But I mean, acting was far superior for Bruce.
Well, I mean, it depends on what direction you wanted him to go.
Yeah. No, I mean, is it slapsticky? Yes. Is it a good bookmark to the end of the trilogy? I think so. I mean, if it was better, I think we would have been clamoring for Evil Dead 4 a hell of a lot more than we already were. But set pieces were great. Yeah, there's obviously a lot of historical inaccuracies. But I do like the fact that he ended up being, it's the grandfather paradox essentially he went through, where he was supposed to, he sent the evil back in time, and he went there too, and he was supposed to be the one to stop it, and he didn't, so it still ended up being into his present. So he still lived through the cabin anyway. So I like that. It was a nice tie into everything. What about highlights for you?
Well, highlights and low points are essentially going to be the same thing, just on different spectrums. Highlight is going to be Bruce Campbell when he's interacting with other characters. Like when he's interacting with Sheila, when he's interacting with the old man, when he's interacting with the other people, is pretty entertaining, right? There's sometimes it goes a little too far, but there's a lot of really shining, funny moments in there, right? Like moments that make you laugh, right?
Yeah.
Like still make me laugh. And then again, the low point is on the other end of the spectrum, is just this, like when he's by himself doing these wacky Three Stooges hijinks, it gets so annoying, and it happens for so long. Like I understand you want to put, your wacky Three Stooges hijinks in the movie, but like space them out, man. Dear God, it is like nonstop. It's like rapid fire. I mean, like there's an okay like balance in the beginning, but like as soon as he goes on that quest, it is like nonstop. And there's not even another character for him to interact with. It's just him being goofy, wacky hijinks for like a solid, I don't even know, it might be more than 30 minutes, maybe like 45 minutes. It feels like 3 hours. It feels way, way too long. And it's like, come on, do something else. Just like do anything else. But like, yeah, the whole part with him in the windmill with all the little bitty versions of himself, the whole him with the 3 books, the whole him and the, getting attacked by, skeleton hands on the ground, getting poked in the eyes and shit. Like it's just non-stop with no other interaction for way too long. And the movie's only like an hour and 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you fit this much crap in the middle of this movie? Like there's so many other things you could have expanded on. Why do you have a solid 40 minutes of Three Stooges bullshit? It's just infuriating.
Yeah. I mean, that could have been done differently. And I guess one way to view it is that his character became, for being smart, I guess, be able to make gunpowder and do what he did to his car. He's dumb in this movie. Like he is dumb. And I can see that like translating to some of the deadites and Evil Ashes, that his personality, probably loving Three Stooges and having that humor himself as the character, imparted then on the deadites that came from his ineptitude.
Right. Well, like, okay. Yeah. Watching this movie, I get the same feeling that I do from like watching the Star Wars prequels. Like George Lucas can't help himself but putting little tiny jokes like every 30 seconds. Every 30 seconds, a droid runs into a wall or makes a funny sound, or some little like monster skitters across the ground, or some monster, throws somebody off or makes a goofy noise. It's like there's nonstop goofy little hijinks in the background, and it just does not stop. Like even when you're trying to tell a serious part of the movie, it's still filled with stupid, jokey stuff. Like, calm down. Just make a movie. Like the first movie was a horror movie. Second movie was comedy horror. And this is just like Three Stooges comedy. Like, I don't know. It's like horror themed Three Stooges comedy. And I just don't get it. And like, this is the character as he travels on. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad in the future. Like I would say like Ash versus the Evil Dead, like the first episode of that show is fantastic.
Yeah.
Like the first episode of that show, I feel really goes back to Evil Dead 2. It goes back to that era. There are jokes, but there's also a little bit of seriousness, right? He's like, goofy, full of himself like he was in that movie, but he also gets humbled a little bit, right? It goes back and forth and it's perfect. And again, it's Sam Raimi directing that very first episode, and it's Bruce Campbell. And I think they shined. They really hit that peak again in that first episode. The rest of the show, not so much, but that first episode really hits it, I think. And like this, this is this. I don't think Army of Darkness again. They just like hit that wacky Three Stooges up to 11, and they just like tried to roll with that. And I don't understand why everybody's just like, oh, this movie's fantastic. Like, I don't know, how many times have you watched it?
I said it's great, but like I said, I think the pitfall was him and his brother being locked in a room and being goofballs, going back to the videos they used to make in their backyards. They're like, oh, we have all this money now. Let's do that instead.
Right. But again, it's like, why didn't they ever make a next one? Well, again, because people saw the Army of Darkness was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do if we give you more money? Like, there's going to be a freaking musical next? I mean, like, what else are you going to make? Like, of course they're not going to, because again, like Evil Dead was horror, then it was comedy horror, and then it was, again, not a horror movie at all. And it was like wacky hijinks. The studio people are like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean,
that's why they never made another one.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the post-apocalyptic ending would have been hella better.
I don't know. I don't. Yeah, the ending wouldn't have fixed this one, but maybe it would have, had a better opening for the next one.
Yeah, but no, you're right. With Ash vs. Evil Dead, like I think the series still got pretty horrific, especially when they back to the cabin. Yeah, they got a little weird with the third season with the puppet Ash, but yeah, the first season felt very, very Evil Dead.
No, yeah, the first season was good, but I would say especially the first episode.
Yes.
The first episode is great. The first season is good. And after that, I think it kind of falls off. But definitely the first episode, and it's cool because they released that episode free to like everybody. So like everybody can watch that first episode. So if like everybody was interested at all, that would win them over because it was a fantastic first episode.
Right. No, I mean it's interesting because I know we were going to see Evil Dead Rise, and Evil Dead 2013. We'll discuss later. I felt goes back to form too. Yes, it's not Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, but it brought Evil Dead back purely into that horror realm,
right?
As a franchise. So, all right, let's get into our number of makeshift crosses out of 10. What would you give this one, Salem?
I will give it 6 makeshift crosses out of 10.
6? Okay.
Too many Three Stooges hijinks for me to want to rewatch it without drinking.
8 for me. I said it's just the nostalgia factor, and it still is Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi. Yes, it's not horror. 7.5. I still rewatch it. Do I rewatch Evil Dead 2 more so now? Yes. When this came out when I was 9, yes, I watched this one a lot. But it's just because I didn't know horror at that point in time. I didn't realize the greatness that laid before it. But no, I still thoroughly enjoy it. It's always a good background movie to have on too. If I don't want to watch it, if I turn on Evil Dead 1 or 2, I'm sitting and watching it. It's not a distraction noise in the background. It's sit down and watch. Versus Army of Darkness, which is a background movie.
Well, yeah, it's fair because, like I said, we have to wait through like 20 minutes of hijinks before anything happens. So,
yeah. So next week we will be taking. We won't be doing Evil Dead continuing just because we have Renfield coming out. So, do these movies want to suck your blood? Join us next week as we dive into the luckily not sparkly vampire movies, and we'll include New Century Renfield, which comes out 4 days from time of this recording, 2 days after this is posted. So we'll be including, we'll have a list. We'll keep you posted and let you know ahead of time. We'll be diving into more vampire movies to prepare for Renfield. So remember, we watch bad movies so you don't have to. And this has been Graveyard saying, have you checked on the children?
Salem saying, long live the new flesh.
Good night.
Night.